All right. Shalom, shalom, Israel, shalom to the Torah tribes. Yasha Allah, giving the course, all honor, glory, and praise unto the Most High God, Yahweh, Bahashem, Mashak, Yahweh. This is Brother Yasha Allah coming back to y'all with yet another video through the Spirit and power, Yahweh, Bahashem, Mashak, Yahweh. All right. Of course, first and foremost, all praises to the Most High, especially in these times, man. Right. So, Salakia, I haven't made a video, you know what I'm saying, in a couple of days, and that's kind of off, you know what I'm saying. But we got to be consistent with this, all right. But it's or I titled this the video, Salakia. The title of this video is "People of the New Testament kept the laws." Right now, I don't plan to make this too long, but I'm going to go through the Spirit, right, or Salakia. I'm gonna go through some precepts through the Spirit. And to show that the righteous people of the New Testament kept the laws, right? Kept the laws of the Most High, as they would say, the Mosaic laws, right? The so-called Mosaic laws, right? Now, all Mosaic means pertaining to Moses. So yeah, Moses' law, all right? Let's go to the book, right? Let's go to the book of Acts chapter 18, verse 18. All right, let's go to Acts 18 and 18. All right, it says, and Paul, after this, tarried there yet a good while, and then took his leave of the brethren, and sailed thence into Syria, and with him Priscilla and Aquila, having shorn his head in Caesarea, for he had a vow. So Paul, he had a vow. What vow is this? This vow is not just an ordinary vow, because you don't shave your head for just any ordinary vow. If you study the laws, right, we got to be studying these laws, right, to get that basic understanding. The laws is a basic understanding of the Most High. And what did the Most High say, right? Let's go to the book of Psalms, right? It's the book of Psalms, chapter 111, right? Psalms chapter 111 and verse 10. And it reads, all right? It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of the wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments, his praise endure forever. So when you do the commandments, you have a good understanding of the Most High, of his word, and anything that pertains onto the Most High, right? You have a better understanding of how of the scriptures, of his words, right? And of the Most High himself, right? So when we go back to Acts 18 and 18, right? If you don't know the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, if you read this precept in the New Testament, you having not read the Old Testament, you're going to be utterly confounded, and you're going to be saying that the law is done away with, and we don't have to keep the law, right? Well, it says that what? And with him Priscilla and Aquila, having shorn his head in Caesarea, for he had a vow. Now let's go to the book of Numbers, chapter 6, because Paul, he had a vow, and because he had that vow, he shaved his head, right? Let's go to the book of Numbers, chapter 6 and verse 1. Right, Numbers chapter 6 and verse 1. It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto Yahweh. So if you want to vow a vow, and this vow is a special vow, it's called the vow of a Nazarite, right? You know, when you read in the Old Testament, you hear about Nazarites. Well, guess what? You had Nazarites in the New Testament, because guess what? Paul, he was a Nazarite, right? Spoiler alert, Paul was a Nazarite. That's why he shaved his head, right? Because he was keeping the laws, right? Verse 3, he shall separate himself from wine and strong drink, and shall drink no vinegar of wine, or vinegar or strong drink, neither shall he drink any liquor of grapes, nor eat moist grapes or dry. So when you're a Nazarite, you're putting off certain things. You're putting off certain pleasures to sanctify yourself and separate yourself and make yourself more holy and special to the Most High, right? Because guess what? When you're a Nazarite, you can't eat grapes. You can't eat vinegar that comes from grapes. You can't eat it's like you can't drink wine. These are the certain things that you're not allowed to eat or drink when you are a Nazarite, because you have vowed a vow unto the Lord, and you have vowed that, look, Lord, I want to I want to be more closer to you. I want to be more holy. I want to be accounted worthy. You know what I'm saying? Uh, if you basically a vow is if you do this, Slakia, Lord, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. Basically, you're kind of making a covenant with the Most High, right? But Slakia, right? Let me keep going. Right? Let me jump down. Come on, verse 5. Right? Or Slakia, I want this precept in Sirach, right? The vow of the Nazarite is heavy because this is what it says in Sirach, right? This is the book of Sirach, chapter 31 and verse 27. It says, wine is as good as life to a man if it be drunk moderately. What life is then to a man that is without wine? For it was made to make men glad. So, according to Bon Sirach, right, he's saying that, look, and he's saying that through the Spirit, of course. He's saying that, look, what life is then to a man that is without wine? Right? Meaning, hey, all men, hey, they should be able to drink wine, right? So basically, when you drink wine, hey, that's good, right? You need wine in your life. That's what Bon Sirach is saying. It was made to make men glad. And so by you cutting off these certain pleasures, right? These certain pleasures that you are rightfully or it's like it that you are able to have rightfully and lawfully, because it's lawful for you to drink wine. That's perfectly fine if it's drunk moderately. But by you being a Nazarite and trying to sanctify yourself to the Lord, you are cutting off that pleasure, right? Let's get this precept in Sirach chapter 14, verse 5, all right? It says, Slakia, that's not what I wanted, right? Sirach chapter 19 and verse 5. It says, whoso taketh pleasure in wickedness shall be condemned, but he that resisteth pleasures crowneth his life. You see that? So when you resist pleasures, you crown your life. And drinking wine, grapes, and stuff like that, that's certain pleasures, especially during the ancient world, right? You're cutting that off for the Most High. Let's go to Numbers chapter 6, verse 5, though. All the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head, until the days be fulfilled in the which he separateth himself unto the Lord. He shall be holy, and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. So Paul, since he was a Nazarite, he had to let the locks of his hair grow, right? And he could not cut it off until the days of his separation, right? Let's say you wanted to be a Nazarite for 30 days, 60 days, however long it is. Hey, Paul, he couldn't take a razor upon his head and cut his hair, right? He couldn't do that. Or any Nazarite, in fact, right? All the days that he separateth himself unto the Lord, he shall come at no dead body, right? And let me jump down to verse, right? Let me jump down, right, to verse 18, right? Let me jump down to verse 18. It says, and the Nazarite shall shave the head of his separation at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall take the hair of the head of his separation and put it in the fire, which is under the sacrifices of the peace offerings. So Paul, that's why he had to shave his hair, because his Nazarite vow was ended. All right, so let's go back to Acts chapter 18, verse 18. All right, this is why Paul shaved his head, and that's why it says that he had a vow. This vow is none other but the Nazarite vow. So if you're saying that Paul didn't keep the laws or didn't try to keep the laws to the best of his ability, because we know that in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he says what? That I die daily, right? 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 31. I protest by your rejoicing, which I have in Mahashiach Yahushua our Lord, I die daily. So yes, Paul did say that. Right, Paul did say that, it's a war against the flesh, right? Let's go to the book of Ephesians, all right? Let's go to the book of Ephesians. Salakia, right? Ephesians. Oh, Salakia, I wanted Galatians, Salakia. Right, I wanted Galatians. This book is Galatians, chapter 6 and verse 16. This I say then, walk in the spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary the one to another, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. Right, so Paul, he did say that. Right, Paul did say that, hey, I testify unto you, you know what I'm saying, I die daily. right, I go off. But that doesn't mean that Paul didn't try to strive to keep the law, because this is what the book, right? Block it. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 5 and verse 48, right? It's Matthew 5 and 48. Because remember, right? First, let's get this, all right? It's the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 11 and verse 1. Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Mahashiach. So hold on now. Paul, he's a follower of Mahashiach Yahushua. He's a follower of so-called Jesus Christ. Right? Let's get this precept. We can establish that. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 1. Be ye therefore followers of God as dear children. Right? So Christ, yes, he is a God. Right? Slakia. Right. So yeah, Christ, he is a God. Right? In a sense, he is our God. Right? But he's not the Most High, of course. Right? But hey, Paul is admonishing and saying to the people, the Ephesians, to the Corinthians, right, to the people he teaches to follow him, because he followed Mahashiach Yahushua, right? So by him following Mahashiach Yahushua, he also might what? He also what? Follows his teachings. All right, let's go to the book of Matthew chapter 5, verse 48. What did Yahushua teach? It says, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. So do we just disannul and just ignore that commandment? We have to be perfect to the best of our ability. All right. So, right now, we're not saying that Paul kept every single commandment perfectly, but what he did do is that he strived for perfection every day, right? And he kept as many laws as he could, right? Just like how we are right now through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. All right, let's jump down to verse 21, though. Acts chapter 18 and verse 21. But bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep this feast that cometh in Jerusalem, but I will return again unto you, if God will. And he sailed from Ephesus. You see that? So why is Paul saying, look, man, I got to keep this feast that's coming in Jerusalem, right? Why is he saying that, right? Why is he saying I have to keep this feast if the law is done away with and we don't have to keep the law? Obviously, if you're saying that the law is done away with, obviously Paul, he didn't know about that, right? He didn't know about that, and he was ignorant of that. So now you're calling Paul ignorant, right, of some very, very vital, right, and important teaching, because you're saying that something that was called holy and good, and is still called holy and good, right, and something that will be kept in the new Slakia, when we look in the eschaton, in the kingdom of heaven, the laws will be kept, but you're saying that it's done away with, right? Wouldn't Paul, right, the mightiest apostle, or one of the mightiest apostles, right, wouldn't he know about this? But he doesn't. He's saying, look, I got to keep this feast that's coming, all right, in Jerusalem. And there's 3 feasts that you keep in Jerusalem, which are what? Let's go to the book of Exodus. This is why you got to read the law. All right. If you didn't read the law, you'd be like, what the hell feast is that? What is that? Christmas? You'd be saying, is that Christmas? You know, is that Thanksgiving, or did they have Thanksgiving back then? It's not Thanksgiving or damn Christmas, man. Right? Let's go to the book of Exodus, chapter 23. Right? Shalaki, not 23. Let me try to find this. All right. Exodus, right? Chapter 20. I believe that was 20, right? Oh, con. Exodus chapter 23 and verse 16, right? The Wadi How. It says, I'm going to start at verse 14. 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. So that's the first feast that you have to keep in Jerusalem, right? Feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee in the time appointed in the month of Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. Meaning you have to appear before the Most High in Jerusalem, right? And you have to bring your, basically your sacrifices, right? Verse 16, and the feast of harvest. So the feast of harvest, the feast of the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field. So the feast of harvest is going into the Pentecost, which is 50 days, right? Slakia, exactly 50 days after what? after the Passover, right? If I'm not mistaken. And it says, in the Feast of Ingathering. The Feast of Ingathering is another way of saying Feast of Tabernacles, right? Which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. 3 times in the year all thy males shall appear before the Lord God. You see that? So 3 times a year, so those 3 feast days you had to keep in Jerusalem: Pentecost, Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Feast of Tabernacles, right? So Paul, he knew about that, man. Because guess what? Let's go to the book of Acts chapter 22. Remember, Paul, he was a Pharisee, all right? Acts chapter 22, verse 3. I am verily a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Sicilia, yet brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers, and was zealous toward God, as ye are all are this day. So Paul, he said that, look, I was brought up at the feet of Gamaliel. Who was Gamaliel, right? Remember, Gamaliel means what? God is my recompense or reward. All right. God is my recompense or reward. Let's go to the book of Acts chapter 5 and verse 34. Then stood there up one in the council, a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a doctor of the law. So Gamaliel was a doctor of the law. Those are the real doctors, right? Those are the real doctors. Because when you go into the etymology of the word doctor, all right, I want to pull this up. When you go into the etymology of the word doctor, because when you think of doctor, you might think of a physician. You might think of a physician, stuff like that. Well, a doctor actually means what? So it says doctor, church father. So it says church father. That's the first definition. That's what it really means. Church father. From Old French, docteur, and directly from medieval Latin, doctor, religious teacher, advisor, scholar. Right? I'm going to read that again. It says in classical Latin, teacher, agent, slakia, religious teacher, advisor, scholar. In classical Latin, teacher, agent, noun, from doctor, to teach, show, cause to know. You see that? So the doctors are real doctors are really so-called religious teachers, advisors, and scholars. So Gamaliel was a doctor of the law, and he was well versed in the law. All right. And had in reputation among all the people, and commanded to put the apostles forth a little space. So that was Paul's teacher. All right, he was Paul. That was Paul's teacher, Gamaliel. All right, so he knew the law. All right, Paul, he knew the laws, and he kept them to the best of his ability. All right, and we're proving that right now. Let's go to the book of Acts, chapter 19. Right, let's go to the book of Acts, chapter 19. All right, let's go to the book of Acts. Slocky, I'm going to go to Acts chapter 20. All right, Acts chapter 20, verse 16. For Paul had determined to sail by Ephesus, because he would not spend the time in Asia, for he hasted, if it were possible for him, to be at Jerusalem the day of Pentecost. Right? Why does Paul want to go to Jerusalem at the day of Pentecost? Right? Why? Because he kept the laws. Right? It's not that hard to understand. Right? Through the Spirit, of course. He kept the laws. That's why he's going to Jerusalem for Pentecost, because that's one of the days you have to appear before the Lord in Jerusalem to keep the feast. Right? To keep the feast. All right? Let's go to the book of Acts chapter 27. All right? Acts chapter 27 and verse 9. Now when much time was spent, when sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them. Now, what is this fast here? Let's go into the blue letter. What is this fast? What fast is this? Let's go into the Greek for this word fast. All right, and I'm going to show you something through the Spirit. Okay, because it says sailing was now dangerous. When you look at scholars and you look at what they found and what they have seen, basically around now, slack it, because this fast, right, it's not going into some ordinary fast, or we're just going to proclaim a fast and we're going to have everybody in it. everybody has to do the fast, right? If you don't have to, you don't really have to do the fast, but if you want to do it, we're doing it right now. No, it's a requirement. Watch this. All right, this is taking too long, so let me pull it up on my phone. All right, this is Acts 27 and verse 9. All right, Acts 27 and 9. Oh, I wasn't even sure. All right, Acts chapter 27 verse 9. Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was not dangerous because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them. All right, here's a word for the fast.
Strong's G 3521. Nastaya.
Nastaya. All right, remember this is the Greek. So it says a fasting fast, a voluntary as a religious exercise, a private fasting. But watch this. It says the public fast as prescribed by the Mosaic law and kept yearly, right? And kept yearly on the great day of atonement on the 10th month, the 10th of the month of Tisri. The month Tisri comprises a part of our September and October. The fast accordingly occurred in the autumn, when navigation was usually dangerous on account of storms, right? You see that? So this is going into what? The public fast as prescribed by the Mosaic law and kept yearly on the great day of atonement. It's going into the day of atonement. Look, the fast, right? Slaki. The fast of the day of atonement. Right? It's going into the day of atonement. If you don't know what that is, let's read it real quick. It's the book of Leviticus, chapter 23. Leviticus chapter 23 and I'm going to start at verse 27. Also on the 10th day of this seventh month, there shall be a day of atonement. This is the day of atonement. We're reading about it in the law right now. It shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your soul as an offering made by fire unto the Lord. Right? And ye shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you, because before the Lord your God. And whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. You see that? So this day of atonement, you had to fast from even to even. All right. On the day of atonement, you had to fast for 24 hours to really purge out all that leaven in your spirit, right? That wickedness, and to afflict yourself before the Lord, right? So that you may humble your soul, right? Like it says in the book of Psalms, I have humbled my soul with fasting, right? And that you may repent of your sins, because fasting and prayer goes together, all right, really well. Let's go to the book of Tobit. It's a great way to get your sins blotted out, you know what I'm saying, and receive mercy of the Lord. Tobit chapter 12 and verse 8. Prayer is good with fasting, and alms with righteousness. A little with righteousness is better than much with unrighteousness. It is better to give alms than to lay up gold. You see that? So prayer is good with fasting. All right. Just like how Yahweh Shah said, howbeit this kind cannot come by nothing but by prayer and fasting. All right. Let's go to the book of. Let me see if I can find that through the Spirit. Man. All right. This is the book of right, Salaki. Right. So fasting and prayer, they go hand in hand. All right, fasting and prayer, they go hand in hand. They've been doing that since the ancient world. All right, and they knew that it worked. You know, they knew that it worked, and it's even confirmed by Yahweh Shah. All right, howbeit Slaki Khan. It's right here. This is the book of Mark, chapter 9 and verse 29. And he said unto them, this is Yahweh Shah speaking to his disciples, this kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. All right, so come. Now let me get another precept proving that the people of the New Testament kept the laws. All right. If you just read Paul's epistles closely, he teaches the law. All right. He teaches the laws. Let's go to the book of Acts, chapter 21, and chapter 24. Verse 24. Then take and purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly and keepest the law. So this is James saying to Paul, right? That look, show these Jews, show these Israelites, right? That you also walk orderly, and that you actually keep the law, statutes, commandments, and that you are not speaking against the law of Moses, man, right? The laws of the Most High, right? And watch this, verse 25, as touching the Gentiles which believe. We have written and concluded that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things strangled to idols, and from blood, and from strangle, and from fornication. Right? Right? Slakia. So even James, man, James was saying, and if you believe that these are ethnic Gentiles, these are not ethnic Gentiles, these are Gentiles, right? These are Israelites who are called Gentiles. All right. So when it says things that they keep themselves that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, that's in the law, right? In Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 1, and in Exodus chapter 20, right, verses 1 on down, you can't have idols, right? That's in the law. So James is teaching the law as well. And from blood, you can't drink blood, right? Let's go to the book of Leviticus chapter 17. Leviticus chapter 17. Leviticus 17 and verse 10. And whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, that enter, that eateth any manner of blood, I will even set my face against that soul that eateth blood, and will cut him off from among his people. So the Most High is serious about that. Do not drink blood, right? So James is even teaching that, all right? So James, he kept the laws, and he was teaching the laws. Because if he was teaching to keep the law, but he didn't keep the law, that would make him a hypocrite. And we know that no hypocrite shall stand before the Lord, right? We know that no hypocrite shall stand before the Lord, all right? We know that, man. This is the book of Job, chapter 13 and verse 16. We have to try our best, all right, not to be found a hypocrite in the sight of the Most High. Job chapter 13 and verse 16. He also shall be my salvation, for an hypocrite shall not come before him. All right. The hypocrite shall not come before him. All right. And the biggest hypocrite is Esau too. All right. This is the book of Job chapter 20 verse 5. That the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment. All right. So the joy of the hypocrite is but for a moment, because in a moment's time he's going to be cut down. Right. And Lord willing, we're not part of that number. Job chapter 17 and verse 8. Upright men shall be astonished at this, and the innocent shall stir up himself against a hypocrite. All right, and the number one hypocrite, that hypocrite is going into Esau, man. The innocent is going into Israel, because they're going to be called innocent, right, in the kingdom. Their sin is going to be blotted out. Right. Let's go to the book of Job, Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 1. Comfort ye, my people, saith your God. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry unto her, that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she hath received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. Right? So this is showing you that what? Salakia, right? That what? Her iniquity is going to be pardoned. Our iniquity is going to be pardoned. The Most High will forgive us in the kingdom of the Most High. Right? We're going to be called blameless. We're going to be called innocent. So that's what that means, that innocent shall stir up himself against a hypocrite. Esau is the number one hypocrite, because he says his motto is in God we trust, yet he doesn't teach to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments. All right? And that's not the only reason, but that's just one of the reasons, man. Right? Pecan. And those are just some few precepts. those are just some few precepts. I'm gonna get this one and I'm gonna close out because I don't want to make this too long. It's the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Also read 1 Corinthians 11. All right, but this is 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 34. Awake to righteousness and sin not, for some have not the knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame. So Paul is admonishing the church of Corinth, who are Israelites. All right, when you read 1 Corinthians 10 and verses 1 on down, he's teaching them the history of the Israelites, because he's saying that, look, this happened to our forefathers because they are your forefathers, right? And he was teaching the history of the Israelites, right? A brief history of the Israelites. But when they were in the wilderness with Moses, right? But he's saying, awake to righteousness. Righteousness is what? Keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 25. And it shall be, this shall be our righteousness, that we observe to do all that is written, all right, in the laws and in the commandments. Roughly paraphrasing, that's your righteousness. Psalm chapter 119, right? I believe in verse 172, all thy commandments are righteousness. So it says, awake to righteousness and sin not. What is sin? Transgression of the law. 1 John chapter 3 verse 4, right? For the way Slakia. Let me just get it real quick, right? Let me get it. 1 John chapter 3 and verse 4. All right, 1 John chapter 3 verse 4. Whosoever commit the sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is a transgression of the law. So that's what sin is. So if Paul is saying don't sin, then he's literally saying keep the laws, because that's how you avoid sinning, keeping the laws. It says, and sin not, for some have not the knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame. All right, so you got it. Yeah, that's what he's saying. Sin not, keep the laws. All right, so with that, I'll let it give all glory and praise unto Yahweh Ba'ashem Mashak Abashah. Lord willing, this was edifying. Brother Yasha Allah, Kwam Yasha Allah. Shalom.